Okay, Chapter 9, Lesson 4, Solving Radical Equations. The skid to stop formula, I'm not sure if you've heard of this or not, if you learned about it in science, but the skid to stop formula is the speed equals the square root of 30 times distance times the drag factor. The drag factor depends on the type and condition of the road, so if the road is wet or not. If a car is traveling at 60 miles per hour, so let me write down my formula. S equals, always write down your formula first, the square root of 30 times distance times my drag factor. If a car is traveling at 60 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour is my speed. So I know it's already given my speed. On a wet road that has a drag factor, F is my drag factor, of half. So F equals half, 5/10. So now I look again, keep reading. Drag factor is 5/10. How far will the car skid when the brakes are applied? Assume that the speed of the automobile can be no more than the square root of 30 times distance times times drag factor. So it's asking how far something is. If it's asking how far, then you're looking for your distance. Your distance is unknown. So I'm solving for D. That means I want to get D by itself. So if I want to get D by itself, I plug in everything I know first. So I know that my speed is 60 equals the square root of 30 times D times my drag factor, which is 5/10. And now all I do is simplify. So I can multiply inside my radical. I have 60 times 5/10, which is 60 times a half. So what is 30 times a half. So that means that 60 equals, what's half of 30? You should have said 15. 15D. So now I have to solve for D. And I gave you a pretest, and a lot of you had no idea what to do whenever you saw this pretest, when you had a formula like this. Well, now I'm going to tell you. Everything that you do in algebra, you have to find the inverse of what you're doing to solve for the variable. So, for example, if you had 5x equals 20, well, to get x by itself, you have to do the inverse of multiplying because you're multiplying 5 times x. Now you're multiplying your variable times 15, but you're also finding the square root of that. You have to do the inverse of square root. So what is the inverse of square root? Well, you should have said squaring something. If I squared the square root of 15D, that means I'm going to take everything out in my square root out of there. Because the square root of 15D times the square root of 15D would be 15 times 15 and D times D. And so I could take out pairs. So that means that when I square something, my square root goes away. So all I'm left with is 60 squared, which is 60 times 60, which is 3,600, equals, my square root is gone, 15D. I'm going to move over here because I ran out of room. So 3,600 equals 15D. Now I have a one-step equation which I know how to solve. How do I solve it? I divide by 15 because, again, I'm doing my inverse. 3,600 divided by 15. This goes away. You should have got 240. 240. So that means that the car will slide 240 feet with a drag factor. Pretty cool. Okay, so let's go on. Solve and check your solution, then write the solution set. So I'm going to do this problem with you. So the square root of x plus 2 equals 5. So the first thing I need to do is try to get just my radical by itself, which means I need to get rid of plus 2. How do I get rid of plus 2? I do the inverse of adding. What's the inverse of adding? It's subtracting. So I subtract 2 from both sides, and I'm left with the square root of x equals 5 minus 2, which is 3. Now what do I do? Well, like I said before, if I'm finding the square root of something, that means square root of a variable, I have to do the inverse of it. How do I do the inverse of finding the square root? I square it. So once I square it, I kiss my square root goodbye. Here's a 2. Square that 2. That's a 2. It looks like a 1. So I'm left with x equals 3 squared, which is 9. So x equals 9. So now I solved it. Now I need to check my solution. So I'm going to check my solution. If I were to check my solution, I'd be plugging this back into my equation. So I rewrite the original. The square root of x equals 9. So here's where I would put 9 because that's where x is. Plus 2 equals 5. Well, what's the square root of 9? The square root of 9 is 3 plus 2 equals 5. Is that true? Yes. So now I need to write my solution set. Well, my solution set, I only have one solution, and this is how you would write a solution set. Solution set, you'd write out the word solution, and yes, you do have to spell these correctly. There's no need for you not to be able to spell solution correctly. Solution set would be 9. Alright, here's another example. So 3 times the square root of x plus 8 equals 2. You want to get rid of the number that's most by itself, that is on the same side of your variable. So 8 is most by itself because the 3 is still connected to the radical. So how do I get rid of adding 8? Well, I subtract 8. So I subtract 8 from both sides, and I have 3. The square root of x equals 2 minus 8 is a negative 6. So now, what do I need to do? Well, I still want to get my radical by itself, and I'm multiplying 3 times the radical. How do I get rid of multiplication? Well, I divide. So I divide by 3, and then this is what I'm left with. The square root of x equals negative 6 times divided by 3 is a negative 2. Then what do I need to do? Well, now I need to get rid of the square root of a number. How do I get rid of the square root of anything? I have to square it. So I'm going to square it. When I square something, my square root goes away. So I have x equals negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2, which is a positive 4. So x equals 4. Alright, so now I want you to check your solution because you always want to make sure that it works. If I were to plug it back in, if x equals 4, then I would have to go back to my normal equation and go 3 times the square root of 4, because x equals 4, plus 8 equals 2. And I need to see if that's true. 3 times the square root of 4, the square root of 4 is 2, plus 8 equals 2. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 8 equals 2. So, I know I did it right. I know I make mistakes sometimes, but I know for a fact I did it right this time. 6 plus 8 does not equal 2. So, what that tells me that sometimes when you square both sides of a radical equation, the resulting equation may not have solutions. A solution that does not satisfy the equation is called an extraneous solution. That's why it's always important for you to check your solution. So your solution set would be blank. There would be nothing in there, or you could just have 0. Or you could put no solution because it doesn't work. which it just means that there's no real number solution. Alright, so this is the last one I'm going to be doing. I really actually want you to pause it, and I want you to see if you know how to do this one without my help first. So pause it. Okay, so 5 minus the square root of b plus 3 equals negative 1. I want to get b by itself, and I need to look at the number that is most by itself, that's on the same side of my variable. The number that's most by itself that's on the same side of my variable is a positive 5. So to get rid of a positive 5, I subtract 5. Oops. From both sides, so minus 5. Minus 5. And so then I need to remember that I'm dropping down everything I have, including the negative number, that negative that you don't have anything in front of now. So negative b plus 3 equals negative 1 minus 5, which is negative 6. So now, if I look, there's an imaginary number in front of the square root of b plus 3, and it's in 1. To get rid of a negative 1 times the square root of b plus 3, all I need to do is divide by negative 1 on both sides. So my negative goes away, and then I have the square root of b plus 3 equals negative 6 divided by negative 1, which is a positive 6. And then, now, to get rid of the square root of b plus 3, I have to square it. So that square goes away. Whatever you did on one side, you do to the other. And you're left with b plus 3 equals 6 squared, which is 36. And now I subtract 3 from both sides to get b by itself. So b equals 33. Now I need to check to see if it's true or not. Because if it's not true, that means that it's an extraneous solution, and that means that there is no solution. So my original equation is 5 minus the square root. B equals 33, so 33 plus 3 equals negative 1. So 5 minus the square root of 33 plus 3 is 36 equals negative 1. 5 minus the square root of 36 is 6 equals negative 1. 5 minus 6 is negative 1, so negative 1 equals negative 1. So my solution set is true, so it's just 33. That is my solution set. Copy and attempt these problems in your notebook. We'll go over them first thing tomorrow.